Prologue, The Ashes of Dawn. The siege of Dragon's Aegis had ended, but the world did not breathe easier. Smoke coiled from the fortress's fractured towers, and the plains below were littered with the carcasses of siege engines and the carrion birds feasting on Sebastian's dead. Dominic stood at the edge of the battlements, his hands still trembling with the aftershock of Songwood's fire. The dragon's voice echoed in his skull, a furnace growl, "You are no heir. You are kindling." Diane approached, her skeletal wings wrapped in linen soaked with poultices. Her mortal guise had frayed, cracks of celestial light seeped through her skin. Elian's priests gather beyond the mountains, she warned. They call your fortress an abomination. Dominic did not turn. Let them pray, he said, watching the horizon. Their gods will answer with screams. Beneath them, in the vaults of black iron, the blood book hissed. Its final page now glowed with a map of scars, a path to a relic older than the pact itself. Chapter 1, The Weight of Crowns. Dragon's Aegis stank of burned flesh and desperation. Survivors huddled in the Great Hall, refugees, deserters, and those too stubborn to die. A blacksmith with molten gold eyes approached Dominic, holding a sword etched with the Banenntis sigil. Forged from your father's armor, he rasped. The steel remembers. Dominic's grip tightened on steel strangler. Memories flickered, his mother's laughter, the clatter of a crib, Jorik's lies. That night, he dreamt of Songwood's lair. The dragon's claws carved symbols into the cavern walls, a language of fire. Rebuild what was shattered, Songwood hissed. But blood must first water the stones. At dawn, scouts reported syndicate riders near the sticks. Dominic led a raid, leaving Azrael to guard the walls. The skirmish was swift, brutal. Among the dead, Dominic found a scroll stamped with Sebastian's seal, "Bring me the dragon's heart. I will carve my name into its ribs." Chapter 2, Whispers of the Void. Diane's wings began to rot. The celestial magic sustaining her leaked like pus, staining the fortress floors with starlight. Azrael cornered her in the archives, his black blade pressed to her throat. "You're dying," he said flatly. "And when you fall, Elian's leash will snap." "What then, angel?" She confessed. Elian, the god king of the Crystal Spire, had tasked her with sabotaging Dragon's Aegis. "The fortress threatens his dominion," she whispered. "But I cannot erase what we've built." Dominic, eavesdropping from the shadows, emerged. "Betrayal suits you poorly, Diane." He tossed her a vial of Songwood's blood. "Drink. Let your god choke on dragonfire." That night, Diane's wings burned away entirely. What remained were scars that glowed like constellations. Chapter 3, The Blood Price. Songwood's patience frayed. The dragon demanded a sacrifice, a life steeped in royal blood, to reignite the pact. "Your ancestor fed me kings," it rumbled. "You bring me beggars and thieves." Dominic's answer was to ride into the wastes, where Sebastian's bastard brother ruled a festering slum. The man, pock-scarred and drunk on rot wine, sneered as Dominic dragged him to Songwood's cavern. "Sebastian will flay your soul for this." The dragon's jaws snapped. Blood drenched the stones, and the pact flared anew. But as Dominic left, Songwood growled a warning, "The blood book's final page, it speaks of a throne. Your throne." Back at the fortress, Azrael smirked. "Sacrificing kin? How very Banenntis of you." Chapter 4, The Shattered Covenant. Elian's priests arrived with spring rains and lies. They marched under banners of crystal and ash, preaching that Dragon's Aegis was a blasphemy. "The blood book is a cancer," their high cleric declared. "Surrender it, and the God King may yet spare your souls." Dominic's answer was a volley of dragonfire arrows. But the attack was a diversion. While the fortress burned, syndicate assassins slipped into the vaults. They fled with 3 pages of the blood book, pages that revealed the location of the Grey Dragon's hoard. Diane, her mortal form flickering, collapsed. "Elian, sees through my eyes," she gasped. "You must blind me." Dominic refused. Instead, he slid his palm and pressed his bloodied hand to her brow. Let him see this. The vision he shared was Jorik's death, the warhammer-crushing bone, the mercenary's curse. Elian's scream shattered every mirror in the fortress. Chapter 5, The First Ember. Sebastian came at midsummer. His army was a sea of steel and sorcery, but his true weapon walked ahead, a child. A boy of 7, with Dominic's amber eyes and Diane's crescent birthmark. Your son, Sebastian crowed. Born to a tavern whence you bedded between battles. Kneel, or I'll feed him to my hounds. Dominic froze. The Blood Book had warned of this, beware the heir who wields fire and feather. Diane stepped forward, her scarred hands glowing. He is not yours to claim. Her voice echoed with borrowed power, Songwood's and Elian's entwined. The boy's chains melted, and he sprinted to Dominic, clutching a locket with the Banenntis sigil. As Sebastian's mages unleashed their spells, Songwood erupted from Mount Sorrow. The battle that followed tore the sky asunder. Afterward, Dominic stood amidst the ruins, his son at his side. The boy's first word was Ashbourne. In the shadows, Azrael laughed. The wheel turns. How droll. Chapter 6, The Hollow Throne. The boy, named Kale, spoke in riddles. His amber eyes flickered with visions, flames devouring a city of glass, a crown of thorns floating on the sticks. Diane insisted it was Elian's poison lingering in his blood. Dominic saw truth in the madness. They rode to the ruins of the Banenntis estate, now a skeletal husk overgrown with ivy and rot. In the catacombs beneath the ancestral crypts, Kale pressed his palm to a wall etched with dragon runes. The stone dissolved, revealing a chamber where the first Banenntis patriarch's skeleton sat upon a throne of fused swords. Clutched in its ribs was a scroll, the true pact. Songwood's voice roared through the chamber. You think you traded gold for power? Fool. Your bloodline was our vessel. Your ancestor souls fuel our flight. Dominic burned the scroll, but the words seared into his mind, to claim the dragon's power, one must become the pyre. That night, Kale vanished. In his cot lay a single scale, Songwood's. Chapter 7, The God King's Gambit. Elian's armies descended like locusts. Crystal paladins marched alongside syndicate mercenaries, their alliance forged in greed and terror. Dragon's aegis trembled under siege engines shaped like praying hands, their fists slamming the gates with divine wrath. Diane, her scars now pulsing with Songwood's blood magic, unleashed storms of lightning and ash. But Elian's voice boomed from the sky, you borrow power, little angel. I am its source. She fell, convulsing, as her borrowed magic turned inward. Azrael dragged her to the vaults. The boy's the key, he hissed. His blood is half Banenntis, half something else. Break him open. See what sings inside. Dominic refused. Instead, he plunged Steel Strangler into his own chest, letting his blood soak the blood book. Show me, he demanded. The pages erupted into a map of stars, and Kale's location, the crystal spire itself. Chapter 8, The Feast of Crows. They infiltrated Elian's stronghold through the belly of a war machine. Disguised as corpse-bearers, Dominic and Azrael slipped into the spire's underbelly, where chained angels forged weapons in pools of liquid light. Kale hung suspended above a font of molten crystal, his small body glowing like a beacon. Elian's high cleric stood guard, chanting. The child's soul will mend the God King's fractures. A worthy sacrifice. Dominic moved to strike, but Azrael's blade found his back first. Apologies, the mercenary smirked. But Elian promised me a kingdom. As Dominic crumpled, Azrael severed Kale's bonds, tossing the boy to the font. A half-blood for a half-god. Poetic. But Kale laughed as the crystal consumed him. You misunderstand, he whispered. I'm not the sacrifice. I'm the spark. The spire exploded. Chapter 9, The Dragon's Due. Songwood came uninvited. The dragon tore through the spire's remnants, his wrath scattering Elian's forces like embers. Dominic, bleeding and broken, crawled to Kale's body, now encased in a cocoon of crystal and fire. Songwood's jaws closed around them both. The pact demands balance, the dragon growled. Your life for the heirs. Dominic agreed. But as Songwood's fangs pierced his heart, Kale's cocoon shattered. The boy emerged, wings of fire and crystal erupting from his back. His voice echoed with dual timbres, child and ancient. No more pacts. No more kings. He plunged a shard of the spire into Songwood's eye. The dragon's death scream flattened mountains. Chapter 10, The Ashen Crown. The war ended where it began, in the ashes of Dragon's Aegis. Sebastian, his face a mask of molten gold from Elian's gifts, led the final charge. But his soldiers faltered at the sight of Kale, now a figure of fractured light and shadow, hovering above the fortress. Diane stood at his side, her mortal form dissolving into stardust. Finish it, she urged Dominic. He did. Steel Strangler shattered Sebastian's crown, then his skull. The Syndicate's banners burned. Yet as the cheers rose, Kale descended, his wings fading. The blood book was never yours, he said softly. It was a leash. And I've bitten through it. He pressed his hand to Dominic's chest, reigniting the Banenntis sigil, not as a brand, but a scar. When the smoke cleared, Kale was gone. Only a feather of fire remained, etching a single word into the earth, remember. Epilogue, The Forgotten Vow. In the silent heart of Mount Sorrow, a new dragon stirred. Its scales were the color of Dominic's amber eye, its breath laced with the Styx's black water. Beneath its claws lay the remnants of the blood book, its pages now blank. The creature spoke with Kale's voice, layered with Songwood's growl, no more dynasties. No more gods. Only, choices. Asterisk. Far to the south, Azrael knelt before a makeshift throne of syndicate swords. A band of deserters and angels, those who'd fled Elian's collapse, crowned him with a circlet of nails. We'll build a new empire, he declared. One that burns brighter. And in Metropolis Thex, a child with Diane's constellation scars peddled dragon scales in the market. When asked where she got them, she smiled. The storm brings gifts. Haven't you heard? The age of fire is over. Now comes the age of... She paused, pocketing the coins. Questions.